It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, April 9th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is really intrigued by where the Lehigh Valley Phantoms are right now.
They confuse me.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We as a show are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky and Twitter at Locked On Flyers as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get started. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, I mentioned the Lehigh Valley Phantoms because they are also in a playoff race, and we are going to get into that and some new blood there as well. But the Flyers are very much on the outside looking in at the moment in the playoff scenario, and they're kind of at the bottom of these bubble teams now. After being in that 3 spot for many, many weeks. So it's a much different place to be in. 7 games of just ill results, I would say. And so, like, what do we do with this next week of games?
Well, like I said, the worst spot to be in is to run out of games, knowing the other teams are playing and you're not playing and you can't affect your own change. That's the boat they're in. They're in that boat now. And it's hard. It's hard because most of the other teams have picked it up. And so it's like now we thought the Capitals Flyers might have been a big game. It could turn into nothing. I mean, that's the weird
Yeah.
part about it. So that's how topsy-turvy it's all been. So right now, all you can do is, again, take care of your own business. But I think it's important to get these young players in and get them this experience down the stretch. Because, again, I don't think many of them got enough NHL experience this year. I think we're going to look at it and say it fell below expectations. Now, had they made the playoffs, or if they make the playoffs, then you could say, all right, I could sort of live with that. If they don't, you can't live with it. And I always said the doomsday scenario was they do that where they don't get the guys in enough, they don't make the playoffs, and they're not getting a top 10 pick. And right now they're on course for that.
Yeah, well, the Flyers have 4 games left. The rest of the teams in the playoff race have 5 games left as of yesterday. Pittsburgh did play last night. We're recording before the results of that game comes out. They're facing Toronto in Toronto. So that will have an effect on things for
Yes.
sure, as they are, in the first spot out of the playoffs right now as we are talking. But in the meantime, the Flyers have a game to prepare for as one of those 4 remaining games. It's against the Montreal Canadiens. And at practice yesterday, it was good to see Sean Couturier back out there in a non-contact jersey, however. So still unclear whether or not he's going to be in any of the remaining games.
I mean, I don't think he should play again this year. I think he at least proved that he could come back. And now next year, they need to have a plan, a maintenance plan for him, a load management plan so that this doesn't happen again. So he
Right.
can have a longer season. So what if he's not, 60 point, 70 point guy anymore? There's still things he can do to help your team. You're not going to be able to trade him and you're not buying him out. So you've got to make the best of this.
Right. And I think that's certainly the way to go, because they did not do that this
No.
season. It was just play them as much as you can, and we saw the results there. I think one of the more interesting things about what John Tortorella had to say after practice yesterday was related to a Charlie O'Connor question about this losing streak. Is it just a poorly timed one that teams run into over the course of a season, or are there particular mistakes that are getting to this team? And Tort says that they didn't generally lose their system structure. That it really has been a combination of scoring woes and struggling in goal. That defensively and systems wise, they are continuing to generally play well with a hit or miss here and there.
Well, you can't say they've defended well because against Columbus, it was horrible.
He did mention that as the exception.
Okay, good.
So
at least even he saw that. Okay.
yes.
Now we can move on from that. Honestly, he should have just taken the pressure off these players now and said, look,
yeah,
we might not make the playoffs. Just go and play your game. There should be a point where you tell them to go play their game so you could see what they can give you as players. Because right now, the odds of them making it aren't good. So why not let your system slip a little bit and see what these guys have and put them all in? That's what I would do. Most likely you're not going to get the results you want. Most likely they're not going to make the playoffs, but you're not going to make it like this anyhow. So you need to see what these guys can do. But if you're only telling them you go in there and you play it my way, well, okay. Well, that's how coaches lose players. When some players can't play your system, some can. And that's what the Flyers, they're going to be in a tricky spot in the offseason because there are some guys they have to sign and they have to figure out, and Danny Briere is going to have to figure out how a guy plays with Torts, how a guy plays without him. How are we going to handle all this? And that's tricky, man.
Yeah, absolutely. The scoring woes, I think, are a bigger issue for me. I think that the lack of finish, as we talked about on
Yeah.
yesterday's show, has been a theme of this season. And, I understand that some guys are streaky and it happens, but it's just felt like a lot of their key scorers we're having problems all at the same time. And that's not great when you're trying to win critical games. And you can talk about scoring chances all you want, but if you can't get one through, are you looking at just some guys are snake bit? Are you looking at not doing your homework about the particular goaltenders you're facing and placing your shots? There's so many different factors that could go into it. And I think that some more specific, like we need to know more specifics about this and what they plan to do to solve it moving forward. Right.
Right. Like, I don't know. I just don't get the feeling I can bring up one thing. Okay. You want me to bring up one thing? I'll bring up one thing. The iPad should be back on the bench. John's completely wrong about that. There's a million teams in the league doing really well because guys could look at their shifts and look at the goalies and talk on the bench and figure out what to do. But he took them away. I don't think that was smart. We're in a video age. Embrace it. So that's one thing, right? So I don't think they do enough video. But during the game, it can be very helpful. Why do you think every guy looks up at the scoreboard to see why his shot went in or didn't go in? So they can adjust. Adjusting on the fly. They've not been good at that. The Flyers, especially in this losing streak, have been horrible at adjusting on the fly as a coaching staff and also players after that. So it's like, yes, some players, and I do think some players need some discussion points. Like, Owen Tippett, hey, look, it's great that you're getting, streaky down the wing, but when you get down there, you got to be more decisive. You've got to either have a great setup play where that guy's definitely scoring a goal, or you've got to know exactly what you're doing with the puck ahead of time because these other teams are studying you, and it's become harder for him to score goals. I mean, that's just the way it is. Konecny's become increasingly frustrated. I think he's frustrated just because he sees that the team isn't doing as well and he has to carry a bigger burden. And I think Farabee, I think he's what he has done, I think, is really good since his neck problem. And maybe you can get a few more results out of him. But I think they're just trying to get blood out of a stone from Farabee at this point. I just don't think there's much there. I think, with Frost, if you wanted to put Frost with Konechny and maybe Tippett and keep that going, I think you would spark at least Frost on that, and maybe. But again, he's going Lawton with Konechny. It's like, Forster's fine. Forster will find his way to the net and find 2 or 3 scoring opportunities a game. But I think, why wouldn't you try to put your 2 best skilled guys together with Frost and Konechny? Doesn't make sense to me.
Well, Frost is in theory going to be on a line with Tippett
Right.
and Forster. So I think that's like in your scenario, that's the second best option.
It's the second best option. Yes.
So that's good. Yeah, in practice, he's going to reuse that Lawton, Farabee, Konechny line from the last game, and he thinks that they got a lot of chances, they just didn't finish, and so that it's worth trying again.
You played against an
Okay,
AHL team and an AHL goalie. Like, I don't know what to say
right,
about that.
right. Interestingly, I think Gurianov is going to check back in to this game with Cates and Brink as the fourth line here, and Atkinson will sit. I don't know that there's a difference between Gurianov
There's
and
no
Atkinson
difference.
at this point.
I think it's
So,
the humane
okay.
thing to do. It's the
Yeah.
humane thing to do for Atkinson. He's just hit the wall.
Yeah.
Maybe in the offseason he could do something. I would buy him out. I think you're at the point where you buy out Cam Atkinson. He has no trade value. He played okay for half the season, maybe. And that's it. I mean, this is what he is. So I think, sure, at least with Gurianov in there, you got somebody who may be able to set up a scoring chance. So, yeah, okay, whatever. It's not going to matter.
All right. Well, we are going to dig more into tonight's matchup against the Montreal Canadiens and talk about a new signing for the Flyers coming up next.
It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL, and baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel's your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. I bet the Mets over the Braves tonight. Well, just for the series, I bet the Braves over the Mets. I don't think the Mets are going to fare too well against them. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book.
Are you watching sports on cable TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the yelling? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest and best stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We will be talking about the Montreal Canadiens game on tomorrow's show after it is played. But in the meantime, we do have that matchup. And when we saw them last on March 28th, so not that long ago, the Habs won decisively 4-1 in that game. And it was kind of near the beginning of the Habs, like, picking things up a little bit, which they have continued since then.
Yeah, Slavkovsky had picked it up. He's a little leveled off a little. St. Louis had come back from a situation at home, so that the team was playing better for him. I think the team was over the loss of Jay Allen. It just seemed like they were in a better place. Guys like Caulfield seem to be playing better, and so they at home they're a dangerous team. Like, doesn't matter. Forget the record. Just throw it out. That's what I said last time too. Throw out the record. Just know they're not going to be easy to beat at home. And you're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with their last change. And you're going to have to do a little better X's and O's wise.
Yeah, and I think that especially the top six of Montreal has been
Yes.
playing so much better. Slavkovsky is really dialed in that line with Suzuki and
Yeah,
Caulfield.
Suzuki killed them last game, right? He just
Yeah.
killed them.
Yeah, and then that second line, Joel Armia, always an issue
Yep.
for the Flyers. Newhook and Gallagher rounding out that second line there. And Yeah, it's going to be a really tough assignment for the Flyers. I think defensively, they're going to have to make sure that their assignments are all covered, especially again with that top six. The Habs did lose to the Rangers on Sunday in their previous matchup, but it's the Rangers.
Yeah, the Rangers are still playing really good hockey. They're
Yeah,
not letting up. So yeah,
yeah,
I get that. The one thing I'm thinking about is more than ever in this game, I would play the super line, put all your best players on one line and play that line for a fair amount of the first period to try and get a lead. I would really do that. I know they're trying to spread the wealth. I don't think spreading the wealth's working well enough because I don't think there's just enough there. There's just not enough talent that's risen to the top there. And I think you got to just go with your best guys for a portion of the first period and really try and put them on their heels. Because again, Primo did a nice job against them last time.
yeah, he did, and so I'm expecting them to put Primo in again,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
just because of that. He did play in the last game, but for the Habs, but I do think that's enough rest for him. So, yeah, this is obviously a very, very important game. We'll see how much more important it is depending on how that Pens game goes, but I do think that this is it. This game will determine whether or not this team will make even has a chance to make the playoffs or not.
Right. And that's why I think you kind of have to just, go what to the wall and see what you get out of that. What I don't like is the proposed defense of again breaking up Jennings and Adder, which again makes no sense. Just because last game didn't go well, they did well. You're not even giving them a chance to refine what was pretty good for them. And now you're just, you're not putting in all three young guys. You're figuring out how to have more vets in the lineup. So it's like whether it's Stahl, whether it's Johnson, okay. I mean, but again, against a fast skating team like this, it doesn't look that great. Like Mark Stahl covers this, and I hate to say this, right? Because this guy's had a terrific career. He overcame an eye injury, but this is the only guy I could talk about is the Mark Stahl here. And he covers a very small area around the net and a little bit in the outside. And if they go wide, he can't skate and catch up. And yeah, once in a while he gets a shot on that, sure. But it's really a detriment to have him in there. Johnson's been okay to below average at times. And it's like, sure, good getting Zamula back in because I think that was ridiculous that the reason
Right.
he was taken out is because they didn't like something they saw in practice. And it's like, really? Okay, great.
Yeah, I think, for this game, I'm really glad, if there's only room for two of the three younger guys that, Zamula and Adder are getting in there as that third pairing. Jining gets the short end of the stick. But, I do think that is the right way to go for this critical game, especially. But the Flyers or the organization has signed two new guys in the last week or so. And one that happened just yesterday for the Flyers is them getting a forward from Sweden out of the SHL, Oscar Eklind. And he seems like a big physical guy, right?
Yeah, I looked at some video. I don't previously know him. He doesn't have a great track record like international play. He's played a little bit. But yeah, he's a guy that definitely likes to give the forearm shiver, has a little bit of offensive ability. He's a bottom six guy. In Lehigh, yeah, probably even third line in Lehigh, maybe second line in the future. Depth NHL guy. That's sort of what he looks up, but he's big. And right now, again, the Flyers are trying to go big again. And it's like, big is okay. I don't mind big. But when you're filling in, my big thing here is they're filling in around the edges, right? So you can never fill in the top six around the edges. You can't. It doesn't happen. You don't really get lucky like that. Uh, you could point out like to Marchessault with Vegas, who just wasn't getting used right in other places, and it worked for them, but it's rare. So where do you get the top six from? You get them from the draft. That's why I thought they should be higher in the draft this year, because that's the only way you're getting these top six long-term guys. You could get some top six guys in trade. You could get some top six guys in free agency. But again, like as an example, I think Tippett for him is having a very good year, right? but he's not getting 60 points. The Flyers have one 60-point guy. Remember, there's a guy out there, Nathan McKinnon, who's got 130. And I only say that because how did they get him? Through the draft. How did they get Rantanen? Through the draft. So that's why I push that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's the timing seems weird. Who it is seems weird, but
They're giving
maybe
him a
there's something
shot.
there.
Well, he's
Yeah,
got an
we'll
ELC,
see.
so they
Yeah,
obviously see something in him as far as
yeah.
potential NHL play. So, and I don't see why it's not possible. I think he could play in the NHL, but I just don't see him as being like a super effective player. But I think, a role player, sure.
All right. The other signing was at the AHL level. So we had another PTO with a Phantoms contract for next season for Matt Miller, who is out of University of Nebraska Omaha. He has already checked in to the Phantoms lineup. A good transition to our Phantoms Tuesday coverage here, and scored a goal in his first game.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely got a little bit of a scoring touch. He's got some size. He's not particularly fast. Again, in the AHL could be a good player. In the NHL, he's in that around the edges guy too, I think.
Yeah, so this is a good opportunity for him,
Yeah.
and I think, you know, as the Phantoms have struggled a little bit, it's always good at the end of the season at the AHL level, I think, to throw some new blood into the mix, and, he's looked pretty solid out there, I would say.
Mhm.
Obviously, he's getting used to the system, he's
Oh
getting
yeah.
used to his teammates. You could see him kind of, like, doing the mental math on what his teammates' names were in the between
Yeah.
period interview,
Yeah.
after he scored the goal, which was funny to see. But yeah, so he has already checked into the lineup. Who has not checked into the lineup is Alexei Kolosov. He's practicing with the team, but he hasn't played yet. The explanation being given from Lappy that he didn't play for 3 weeks. He wasn't even on the ice for 3 weeks, and so they wanted to give him like a full week, like so it'd be 2 weekends worth of games for the Phantoms of practice time, and so I'm hoping we'll see him in one of the couple of games next week.
I mean, he should be in the next game. It shouldn't be a
Yeah,
couple of the games. He should be in the next game. If he's not in the next game, I don't understand it. I mean, they had no problems throwing Fedotov in there. Now, again, you talked about this time off on the ice. Okay, but he is also young. So it's not like he can't be resilient. But Fedotov, they threw him right in there, right with new equipment. So again, there's a difference in philosophy here that I think we're seeing, Rachel.
yeah.
I think that's pretty obvious.
It's pretty interesting. We'll see how it pans out for both these guys, but with Fedotov being a little bit older, maybe that has something to do with it, that they think he can handle it better. But who knows? Hopefully, we will see a Kolosov on Friday or Saturday this week. But there's so much more to talk about with the Phantoms, including a playoff update and kind of where things stand with some of the guys. We will do that coming up next. The season is getting close to its end point, but I want to remind you, you can still win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether NHL superstars like Connor McDavid, Nikita Kucherov, or Nathan McKinnon, or Flyer standouts like Travis Konechny will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in any given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you have to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail those picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code Locked On NHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So this week, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, I would not say had a good week. I would say they had an okay week. There were 4 games going back to last Tuesday. They won one of those games in overtime versus Providence and lost the other 3. I will say that last Tuesday's game against Hershey, they lost 1-0 in a very well played defensive game. And I do think that was a good game for the Phantoms. It just didn't go their way. And Hershey, as we know, is like one of the best teams in the AHL. So, I'm going to give them a lot of credit for that one. But I would say that Saturday's game against Cleveland, where they lost 3-0, I know one of them was an empty net goal. They just got a couple of their guys back. We know that, Columbus was playing a lot of AHL players and Trey Fix-Wolanski
Yep.
and those guys got sent up, but they were back down in Cleveland for this game. So it was
Okay.
a tough lineup to fight. I would have liked to see them and at least get something, but good goaltending against a tough lineup. They just struggled in that one. But the one that disappointed me the most was the 5-1 loss against
Yeah.
Wilkes-Barre Scranton. Mostly because, again, big rivalry, but also this could be their opponent in the first round of the playoffs.
I mean, how else do I say it? But if they make the playoffs, they don't look like they're going to do much. So will it be good if they make the playoffs? Sure. It's always good experience. I just feel like they're not going to be going into the playoffs on a roll. Looking really good. Everything's clicking. Now they'll get some players
Right.
back from the Flyers, which will help. But I think you're right. I think it's hard to imagine anything. Now, if they get caught from behind, I guess it would be worse and not making the playoffs. So they have a good chance of making it, but it's just they're underwhelming. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, and it seems like they will make it unless things go absolutely worst case scenario because they are in that last playoff spot in the division. Hartford, who are above them, are 1-8-0-1 in their last 10. So, Hartford is technically still catchable, only 3 points above
Right.
the Phantoms at this point. Springfield, who's in 7th, is 4 points behind the Phantoms, and every single team has 5 games to go. So I feel like they're solidly in that, 6th spot. I'm going to knock on wood right here,
Yeah.
um, they're either going to face Charlotte or Wilkes-Barre Scranton.
I mean, I'm
And
just going to ask the audience, how old were you the last time Elliot Denoyer scored a goal?
yeah, we talked about
It's been
him
a while.
last. Yeah, we talked about him last week that they moved Denoyer and Avon positionally. And last week they were on the same line. This week they're on different lines. But Denoyer had 2 assists in the 6 games since the change was made. So still not on the board with a goal, but making some plays. J.R. Avon had a really great play to Miller for that first pro goal, and I think has thrived a little bit moving back to the center position.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a positive step for both of these guys, but there's still there's not enough runway here for them to have the ability to improve enough, I think, to have it be truly effective.
Right. And Denoyer's probably hurt his chances making the Flyers next year. Like he probably
Yeah.
has because he was on the radar.
Yeah.
Like he was up last year. He looked good. And I don't know how many games. I heard it's like 40 games that he
At
hasn't scored a goal.
37, I think. Yeah,
37. I mean, it's
37 or
crazy.
38. Yeah, something like that.
It's bad.
Yeah, it is. The other big factor, I think, in the assessment of this team and will they even have a shot in the playoffs, the power play was 0 for 13 for the week, and that's on it's just not going to cut it because
No,
if you remember, the Phantoms were near the top of the league in the power play for the first half of the season. We talked about it a lot.
we did.
Now they are at 16th in the league based on how things have gone in the second half. And you have to say, well, there's call ups and that has affected
There's
them. But
still enough players there. Come on.
yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like it's it could be a contributing factor, but it's not everything. That's for
Right. You still have Emil Andre. Mete could run a power play.
sure.
Uh, Lisinski's hot, so he
Yep,
certainly could do something. Marodi's back. Tuamala's got a great shot. Like, come on.
I think so. I will say, like, again, bright spot, Emile Andre. I think this has been such a good learning experience for him this season. He still makes mistakes, but I do think there's been some improvement here.
And I got to ask another question. I mean, why is Sandstrom the backup?
Well, they
It doesn't.
switch. It's
Do
not there
they? All
with the
right.
Phantoms, there's no starter
Okay.
backup,
All
really.
right. All right.
It's just they kind of alternate.
I mean, but they're giving
Um,
Peterson more starts than he really deserves. I mean, considering what is he going to do for them in the future? Nothing.
Listen, I can't explain it. I'm just telling you,
I
like the
know.
4 games this week, they alternated.
Okay, fine.
So there is no
I
top
mean, this
goalie
guy
here.
again is a buyout candidate. At least Sandstrom, maybe there was a little modicum of hope that you would keep him in the organization, but I guess not. But if nothing else, don't you owe him the playing time? You don't owe Cal Peterson anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that game on Sunday though, Felix Sandstrom was in and 4 goals against. So,
Yeah,
you know, I don't know that there's much to this discussion other than they're
maybe.
both mediocre at this
Yeah,
point in terms of how they're playing.
I
So,
guess.
um, it kind of is what it is, but it's true that it doesn't really help the situation heading into a potential playoffs. They do have 2 games this weekend. So on Friday they are at Hershey, which is going to be
Yeah, I mean, you
that's
gotta
going to be
have
a
one
difficult one.
goalie in the playoffs. You can't have two. So I don't
Well,
know. I
we'll
don't know
see if
who it's
Kolosov gets into these, and
okay,
we'll
and
go
that's
from
even
there.
another thing. It's like never mind. They know what they're doing, I'm sure.
All right. So we have that Friday game at Hershey, Saturday at home against Bridgeport, who has been a thorn in my side for being terrible, but somehow winning against the Phantoms. Hopefully, we can turn that around. We have the game against Montreal tonight. And so we'll talk about that tomorrow. Plus, we'll have our mailbag. So if any of what we talked about today raise some questions for you, send them in via Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available in the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.